And it says we're live. On to the second episode of Men's Rights Meta, and this episode is Beyond Awareness. Now, when we're talking about Beyond Awareness, this is it's really about the concept that everybody's been talking about in the movement since things really took off in the last couple of years, which is the idea that we need to raise awareness, and that's like the most important thing right now and everything. But with me right now is the angry egalitarian himself. We've got Mad Cat here. So,
hello, everyone.
Tell us a bit about yourself, Mad Cat, because I don't know if a lot of people know about you or anything like that, or your background. But just give us a bit of a short thing, and maybe later on we'll go further in depth. But
well, I am a Gemini. I like long walks on the beach, a good long novel, and a hot bath. Ladies, I'm single and very. Oh, anyways, so I am Mad Cat, also known as the Angry Egalitarian on YouTube. I do have my own channel on YouTube. I do a lot of the things that I do in the men's rights movement is a lot of background stuff. So you don't always see what I do, but you kind of see the other things that I help out with. For that example, I am the site administrator for goodguycomics.com, which is done by Brian from the Honey Badgers. I also am an editor for Devil's Contract, which is done by Nephenor. I'm also trying to help out the Red Pill gamers. While I do help with the videos, I am doing some background stuff with that as well. Also, I am a writer. I actually am a published author. You can find my books on Smashwords, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple Store. Pretty much anywhere you can buy ebooks, you can most likely find me. There's a few places I'm not. My real name is Chris Vody, or Christopher D. Vody, and that's where you can find my works. Recently, I just released a book called Dagar Legacy, which is about vampires in the 14th century Europe who are basically spreading the bubonic plague. It's I've gotten some good remarks back so far from it. But that's basically me in a nutshell.
oh, that's well, thanks for coming on. And it looks like we've at least got 3 viewers here, and they're probably going to be very upset because for whatever reason, I still have not been able to probably get the chat working or anything like that. I'm trying to figure out all the back end of Google and everything like that. It annoys the
Well, I'll say this to any of our viewers. If you're listening right now and you want to ask a question to me or Rachel, just find me on Twitter, ggmad_cat, C-A-T. Just go ahead and tweet at me, and I will try to read your message as best as I can.
All right. Now, I guess the situation becomes that when we see that there's a lot of videos, there's tons of videos on YouTube about the men's movement covering everything from veterans' rights to circumcision, just anything you can possibly think of. And it is definitely needed. You definitely need to bring about awareness to these issues and things like that, and allow people to know that these are something that's going on in our society. But I think the situation is that often we find ourselves in a delicate position, because what happens is that once you red pill all of these folks, they suddenly become aware that how fucked they are, and how bad their life is, and how much trouble society is in, and so they find that all of these dreams that they told themselves were possible are probably entirely out of reach. So if they wanted to get married one day, and have a family, and they wanted to feel, they wanted to have the, you know, the American dream, or it doesn't matter where you come from, but that idea, that ideal of what you really wanted to do, like maybe you wanted to settle down, or maybe you wanted to go into something like education, and you wanted to be a kindergarten teacher, and you're a man, and now you find yourself unable to do that because they're slowly but surely pushing men out of the education field and in lower education. But I guess the situation is that we spend a lot of our time letting people know about all these issues, letting people know about what's going on with all these crazy feminists and everything like that. And we put people in a position where they're very, very depressed, I think. They may have been depressed before, but now it feels as though there's no hope, and they realize that there's no services for them, that there's still no services, and now they're just aware of how little help is really available, and nobody's coming, and it's very difficult. And so people will often say, well, why don't you privately fund it? And one of the things that we found with other organizations like AVFM and things like that, it's very difficult to fund these kinds of projects long term, like a men's shelter or several men's shelters. The government would really be needed to get something like that up and running. Typically, people don't want anything to do with that because they see men as being violent, and if they're homeless or something like that, they don't want, or if they're coming out of domestic violence situation, I think the fear typically is that they might have done something to provoke it, and so that they might also be violent. It's very difficult in every realm. Like, even if you look into something like foster care, one of the problems becomes that it's difficult to place older male children or to get them into mental health programs. Like, I remember when I was going through a rough patch when I was younger, and I had severe depression, I was suicidal and things like that. I was placed into a long-term treatment facility, and it was all girls. They don't really have the equivalent of that for boys typically, of how old I was.
So I want to make a comment on this real quick. You were talking about how basically we're asked, well, why don't we privately fund this? Why aren't we there for all of these major events? And I think part of that question comes in that, especially with feminists and social justice warriors, they believe that they live in this patriarchy and we just have all of this resource. And this is where the whole patriarchy theory falls apart, is that we don't have any of these resources you think we have. So we can't really help out people all that well because we don't have the same resources that feminists do.
Absolutely. And one of the other problems is just that when you bring these issues up to folks, the feminists will laugh at it. That there was a woman in Parliament, in the British Parliament, who laughed when they were suggesting, that they discuss male suicide, male issues on International Men's Day, and she remarked something that's like, "Oh, I'm sorry for laughing, but to me, every day is Men's Day." And that's the mindset. It's that they think that all of these resources that already exist are there specifically for men. But typically what it is it's often more geared towards women. And so even if men are able to get a hold of something like mental health care, it's very much geared to the female way of healing, which is to just kind of vent until you feel better.
I can give you a prime example of this situation. Well, first off, Evildoer says he feels triggered that there's no chat. So quick shout out to Evildoer. I'm always happy to make you feel triggered. But during the recession of 2008 to like basically 2012, the one department that really got hit hard was construction. But a lot of men started becoming unemployed. There was no jobs for them. So Obama and his administration wanted to give basically some money out to help men that were unemployed. Well, feminists heard of this, and it's like, why are you favoring men over women? No. You can't do that because it's sexist. You have to support women if you're going to support men, even though on average women had jobs when men did not. That there were far more men who were unemployed. So through a lot of working and figuring it out, most of that money went to people who already had jobs. This is money that was supposed to help people without jobs, and it ended up going to people who had jobs.
Yeah, and this is just an ongoing thing. And right now the situation becomes that there are going to be people in the movement who do need help on occasion, who might hit a rough patch, like maybe they find themselves in a violent relationship where their partner is being violent to them, and they want to be able to leave their home and take their kids with them, and they have no way of doing that. And so what ends up happening is that the only way you can then try and help them is to try and find somebody else in the movement who'd be willing to help them out. And that's really this is about the only thing that you have in a lot of these situations. Often if there is something like a men's shelter out there specifically for these kinds of things, it'll be several states over or just completely unavailable to you. And I remember there's actually, I think, one specific mental health care facility specifically geared for treating men, I think in the UK, I think it's in London. And then there's a rape crisis center that provides services specifically for men, I believe in Sweden. But everybody kind of goes silent the moment you suggest that maybe there's enough of a difference between the sexes that maybe you need to do something specifically to try and treat maybe mental health differently with men. That maybe there needs to be a different way to try and provide those services for men, because they certainly try and gear it to help women when they're in need. Or maybe they'll put men through sensitivity training, like police officers when they're talking to women who've been raped and things like that. They do all these things that they will bend over backwards. But the moment you suggest that maybe men need services to deal with some of these things, everybody just kind of goes quiet and people start making excuses, and then they just kind of turn their heads away.
Well, it's even worse than that, because even if a man does get a service, like if on a university, needs some sort of help and go to like a counselor or a therapist, they're so indoctrinated with feminism and gender studies that they will even push like, oh, you feel like no one's talking to you, that women won't pay attention to you? Well, you must have done something to provoke that. Oh, you got hit by a woman? What did you do to provoke that? It's even if men can get help, they get the wrong kind of help, because it's the help that blames them for everything because they're a man.
Okay, I think I remember. I want to say in Australia there is a service for dealing with domestic violence with men, but it's basically teaching them how to not be violent. That's basically what it amounts to, is don't be violent kind of thing.
Well, also with I guess like domestic violence hotlines that you can call to try to find a center. Many of them will just say, well, there's no services, but some will transfer you to speak to a counselor who will tell you, well, you need to learn to control your anger. Even though a man is basically saying, I'm being attacked, they will still focus on him being the perpetrator.
I think that my concern in all this, with all of the raising of awareness and everything like that, is that we're dropping cold, hard facts onto people. And not everyone is prepared to deal with that. And it's distressing because I find that there's not much that we can do other than raise awareness often, because there's not enough people, there's not enough services. And if you try and talk to feminists and you try to talk to the government, they just kind of talk in circles, and then it just becomes this endless loop of bureaucracy where they'll be like, okay, well, I think you need to go talk to this person, or maybe you need to go talk to this person. It looks pretty dire. And so I sometimes wonder if sometimes when we're dropping all these facts onto people, if we're making people feel better, or if we're only worsening their already existing depression, and that all we then can do at that point is to provide some sort of entertainment or respite for them away from everything else, and just to, I suppose, cheer them up for a little while.
So there is a question. Go ahead.
Yeah, go on. There's a question?
Yeah, there's a question that actually relates to what you're talking about from Hazard or Hazard Devil, Hazard Evil. Either way, cool name. He says, would pointing out how university bursaries, I don't know what that means, and equivalent, overwhelmingly support women over men be good ammo?
You could, but it's going to be, right now, the current state on college campuses, I mean, keep in mind, these are the same campuses that gave birth to situations like Mizzo. And I know some people try and say, okay, well, we need to separate these issues of race and gender, but it's all identity politics. And so right now, that's not going to work if you try and talk to anybody from a college campus. But if you try and perhaps talk to the government, they may consider it. They may say, okay, well, maybe we need to go do something like that. But it would take a lot of people, a lot of people. And right now it's going to be very, very difficult to do that, because right now a lot of folks are still in a state of delusion, saying like, oh, okay, you know, well, the only people who find themselves in the situation where they have a false accusation lobbed against them, like, you know, that those sorts of things that they just don't happen as often, sort of thing. They still want to live in this state of denial, because you kind of have to. If you constantly thought about all of those things, about how just walking outside the door might be dangerous, if you thought about how, you know, one nice conversation that you had with a girl could turn into a years-long court battle, you wouldn't be able to do anything. You'd be so afraid that you would just stay inside all the time. And that's the problem that we're in, because you kind of have to look away to keep on living. Is there anything you would like to say to that?
Well, Hazard Devil, he told me how to pronounce his name, said that bursaries are basically, it's equivalent to scholarship kids or grant students. Basically, they get money to reduce the amount that they have to pay. And
yeah, that
so,
would be.
And yeah, that's a very good point, but it's something that we've been saying to feminists for a very long time. And for me, the problem lies in that they are not bound by facts. Gender studies is not bound to facts. It's always about feels. And this is what the culture has created with people. I mean, the political correct nature and the positive feeling movement that we've gone on has created this culture that facts don't mean anything when it comes to your feelings. If you feel offended by something, then no matter what the situation is, that person is wrong for offending you. I mean, we had a situation where, what was it? Christina Hoff Sommers triggered a dog. I mean, what the fuck is that? A dog doesn't have that kind of complex emotions to be triggered by a speaker talking about feminism. And yet feminists were like, oh no, you triggered my dog. You need to stop talking. So facts just doesn't matter with these people at all. And we can bring up, hey, more women are graduating college than men. More women are getting access to scholarships simply for having a vagina, where men get very little access to that kind of money. They get more grants than men do. That doesn't matter, because a woman feels that she's being oppressed. That's all that matters. Feels trumps truth.
And I think that you kind of have to laugh to keep from crying, really. I think a lot of us play it off and try to keep up in good spirits and put on a brave face and things like that. But, I've said this to more than one person before, and I don't know if people will take offense to this, but I say that, everybody in this movement is a little bit broken. Everybody. Everybody's got a story. Everybody's got some issue. And the reason why I say that is because going through something like that makes you more empathetic to others, and means that you're more likely to empathize with somebody who's going through these things. And you see yourself in others, and you don't want to see those people hurt in the way that you were hurt. And that's what I think really brings people into this. Either something happened to them or someone close to them, and they see that person that they care about in somebody else, or just in all the faces of these people.
Well, a prime example of all of that would be the MGTOWs. I mean, it's in our nature to want to care for women. One thing I always say is that men and women care about women, but men and women don't care about men. And most of the time, men will do whatever they can to help a woman out. It doesn't matter what it is. If she cries, if she, asks for some sort of charity, men line up to help her out. And I think a lot of women know this. Either they know it front and forward or subconsciously, but they know it and will abuse this to a point that men begin to feel taken advantage of. And eventually it's like, you know what? This is not worth it anymore. Whether they got married and it got divorced, whether they got falsely accused of something that they didn't do, whether, they were led on and then eventually dismissed when they were no longer useful to someone. It's just a vicious cycle, and men get ticked off with it to the point that they stop caring about people. And it's unfortunate that that happens, but I mean, there's really nothing that anyone can do about it except to say, you know what? I don't need you anymore. I don't care about women anymore because I don't want to be hurt anymore. Mm-hmm. And that's why, I'm always saying that I'm like one bad incident with a woman away from being a MGTOW. I'm not there yet, but I'm very close.
Yeah, and I really don't blame these men for checking out of relationships. I really don't. Because if you find yourself in a situation where there's really not many options for you, and the most helpful thing you can kind of do for yourself is to just decide not to have sex with women or to have any, or to get married, I totally understand that. But that seems to be what people are looking into, what they're trying to find some way to help themselves. And I almost want to say that the next step in all this in the men's movement is really further cultivating community and men forming kinds of friendly support groups with each other again. The return of male spaces. And right now they've shut them down, the physical spaces, the places that would typically be where men would meet up together and have these conversations and say, there's some shit going down in my life and I'm really stressed out right now and I have no idea what I'm going to do. Those places have all but gone away in the public sphere. But now, with the use of digital spaces, you can bring it back. And I think that's going to be incredibly important. I remember like talking to Tom Golden in that one episode of Honey Badger Radio, and I remember when he was describing all the stuff, I even teared up. But he was saying that given enough time, a lot of men will heal themselves, and they'll pick a project or something, and they'll find a way to honor others in society and things like that. They will heal themselves through actions, and even so, I honestly think that the active community can be very helpful towards that, because if men are all working on their own personal projects and all of this, and they can talk to each other about these projects and or whatever it is that they're doing, or even just have fun together, and take their mind off of some of the stuff, like playing video games or just laughing at the dumb stuff. I think that can be incredibly healing, and that's really all that's financially feasible at the moment. I think that we have a couple of pockets of established organizations that manage to gather funds and things like that, but not nearly enough to do what I think needs to be done. And it's very sad, but that's kind of the cold, hard truth of it all. There's just not enough money or resources in existence right now in the movement to fund these kinds of projects. And when you come upon that reality, you feel incredibly powerless. You don't know what to do. You want to help, but you have no idea how. And all you realize that can be done is to just try and do what you know how to do best and help in your own way. And which is one of the reasons why I'm doing these podcasts here. The first step to understanding where we go next is being aware of ourselves, is being aware of the state of the movement and everything. I mean, Paul Elam and everybody had a voice for men and things like that.
I'll be right back.
Sorry. They did the International Men's Conference last year, which was good. It was still very small. We had something in the realm of, I want to say, 200 plus people. It's still relatively small, and it cost a lot of money. And from everything that I understand, I think that there's a lot of conspiracy theories about what happened to the money and things like that. But I don't think there's really any basis to. I think those claims are baseless, from what I understand, and from what I understand also, more money was lost than made, is to put it lightly. So it wasn't really something that funneled money into anybody's pocket. Ultimately, it was. There's a reason why we need help from Breitbart this time around, the second time around, and it's because there's not enough people putting money into the pot. It's very difficult to fund these kinds of things. It really, really is. Ultimately, we find ourselves in a situation where we have to get creative. And that's really the only thing that will save us, is creativity, is our ability to be resourceful and knowing how to use our skills to the best that we can. And Mad Cat is missing for right now, and he'll eventually return to us. But I think that's the hardest thing to let sink in, is just how powerless we ultimately are. I know that there's a lot of talk back and forth about how many folks are out there, but if you're largely anonymous and people don't even know how many folks are in the movement, it can be very, very difficult for people to know how much of it. Sorry.
Well, it's
the actual
difficult
online
not
presence
to
of it
be
all.
anonymous, though.
Oh yeah, it is. I've often said that the men's movement, as it exists, is very much like this iceberg, where we're only really seeing the tip of it because there's so many people who are anonymous, who are afraid of showing their faces, of letting people know what they're involved in. It's almost like um, being involved in some kind of secret organization or something, because you're afraid of people finding out that you're in this super secret organization or something. But it's just really a lot of normal guys, from what from what I've seen, from people I've spoken to, and some of them have families, some of them have really good jobs that they want to protect.
I've met a lot of people that have, found me through various means that learned that, this is the kind of stuff that I talk about a lot. And they're like, I really love what you do, Mad Cat, but I wish I could do it. But, I have like a family, a job to protect, and people found out, I'd probably get fired. And that's where people are afraid. And it's a
Absolutely.
legitimate fear, unfortunately.
Yeah, they will fire you. They will. People will send in things saying that you're some kind of a rapist or a pedophile or some other kind of crap like that.
Well, it happened to Thunderfoot.
Oh yeah, absolutely, it did.
And it
he's
was
not
fortunate
even.
that his company just doesn't really care what he does with his free time.
And he's not even an MRA or anything like that. He's, he considers himself to just be, an atheist, skeptic individual. He doesn't consider himself an MRA, from what I understand. But you know what? I really would like to get into the meat of this discussion, and because there is a bit of a surprise, I suppose, in all of this, because I would like you to tell people a little bit about your situation, Mad Cat, if you would feel comfortable. You're somebody that I deeply respect because of all that you do, and I think that you're ultimately you're an underappreciated voice in the community, because I think that you can bring a lot to the community. Everybody does. Everybody knows something that you don't, and I would like you to tell a bit of your story if you can, whatever you feel comfortable with.
Okay, well, thank you for all of that. Well, the long short of it, it's a very long story, but the short version is basically I got injured while working. I was sitting in an office chair, leaned all the way back. It broke, and I fell to the ground and hit the back of my head on a filing cabinet. Eventually, well, I didn't experience anything right away, but soon I had to be taken to the hospital. And over several weeks, I noticed there was a problem. Doctors kept telling me there's nothing wrong with you, get back to work. But eventually they had to admit there was something wrong with me, but it took a very long time to get a correct diagnosis that I had post-concussion syndrome. Up until that time, I had doctors telling me that I was just depressed and I didn't like my job. That's why I was experiencing what I did. Now, the symptoms that I have that's associated with post-concussion syndrome is I have severe issues with memory, concentration, focus. It's very poor. I have problems with I have light and noise sensitivity, so you can already see the focus issues right there. I have these thoughts, I just can't get them out. So I have light and noise sensitivity. Like if things are too loud or too bright, I just have difficulty functioning. My head hurts a lot. It's not a headache. It's not a migraine. A lot of people try to say it's one or the other. It's not. It's something completely different, but it feels like my brain is hurting a lot. Whenever I go out and about these days, if I'm in a new environment that I'm not used to, my brain gets so overloaded with stimulations, sight, sound, taste, smell. I mean, if I just get too much of it, my brain just basically shuts down. You know, I can last for a little bit of time, but the longer I'm in that environment, the harder it is for me to function. And then there have been times where I nearly passed out while in public because I couldn't handle it. If I am in public, I try to limit my interactions as much as possible, which is why I was able to do Gamergate in Phoenix, is because I tried to limit myself as much as I could. So I mean that's basically my disability in a nutshell. There's a little bit more, but that's the basic gist of it. Now, since my injury, I have not received proper medical help. When I had insurance, when I had Medicaid, no doctor really wants to help me. Problem is that most doctors don't understand what my condition is. There's a movie coming out Christmas Day with Will Smith talking about post-concussion syndrome in the NFL, and that's probably going to shed a lot of truth about what some of the things I'm going through. Even though mine wasn't a sports injury, there's probably going to be some truth revealed in that. But I ended up losing my job. I lost access to long-term disability. Well, I was supposed to get it, but the insurance screwed me around so much, and I got denied for it. I got denied for workers' comp as well. I lost my job. I lost my apartment. I mean, I finally got my own place to live where I make the rules, and I lost it because I couldn't pay for it. I had to sell my car just to get money. I had to move back in with my mother, which I really didn't want to do, but I didn't have a choice. Any person I'd ever known in my life before my injury pretty much stopped talking to me. So, I mean, I pretty much hit rock bottom with my situation. Now, since that time, I've tried to release a couple of books, which I've released 3 books since then. I've joined the men's movement, and for a time I was with the honey badgers. I would say, well, my situation improved a tiny bit, but I'm still kind of in the middle of it. But, you know, I had access or Medicaid for a little bit of time, but then the insurance company screwed me over on that one, so I lost it. And, well, my family is not really able to take care of me anymore. And it's kind of gotten to a point where they're ready to kind of let me go, for me to leave. And that sounds bad, but, you know, I can't really blame them because I can't really do a whole lot around the house. I really do try, but it's like there are just days I am so affected by my disability. My head's hurting. I can't really function. I don't even eat because I don't feel well enough to actually make myself something to eat. That's just how bad my disability is. Unfortunately, my family doesn't really understand what my disability is, and there's a part of them that they think I'm faking it because I don't want to work. And my God, do I wish I could work. If I could just have money again, that would be so great. So, I mean, that's my basic situation now is that, well, about last week, I think, my mother came to me and told me that her and her husband have been talking. He's not my father. It's her third husband. They've been talking, and he really wants me to no longer be here. In fact, they're looking to move sometime next year, and he doesn't want me to come with them. So there's a very good chance that sometime next year they're going to kick me out. And they know I have nowhere to go, but like I said, they can't afford to really take care of me anymore, especially if they're going to be moving. So, I mean, that's my basic situation is I'm exhausted all of my options. And, you know, now I have to face the possibility that I'll be living on the streets.
Yeah, and it was I remember there's really a lot here to unpack, and I brought you on because not just because of your situation, but because I've wanted to do a stream or something like that with you for a very long time. I don't think people often get to see the side of you that I get to see, which is that, you know, I think you're a great person, but I think that one of the things that probably has happened is that you've been stuck in this situation for far too long, and you realize that you're constantly having to defend yourself against people who are saying, "Oh, it's probably just all of this other thing, these other things," and they don't believe you. And there have been other people in your situation, not just with post-concussion syndrome, but other people who have something in the realm of a very rare disorder or something like that, and they find themselves trying to explain this all to a doctor, and it's only later on, after seeing a ton of doctors and having just this big pile of hospital bills, are they really able to figure out what's actually going on. And they say, "Oh my gosh, yeah, by the way, you have like this really, really rare condition in conjunction with these other things." And we finally figured out what it was, because all of this was just muddled. And yeah, I remember I've actually been concerned about you since we became friends, because I knew your situation and I knew how bad things were, and the only thing that I knew to do in that situation was to bring you in and to show you real friendship. And
yeah, it's been one of the hardest things about all of this is the isolation. Like I said, most people I ever knew before my disability, well, every single one of them stopped talking to me. And it was like, before Gamergate in Phoenix in August, the last time I'd ever been around people was the October that prior year. So I spent a lot of time alone, and you know, you came into my life and you really showed me that friendship, and I'm immensely grateful for that, because, you know, I'll be honest, it saved my life. I mean, that's how bad things are. And, you know, I openly admit that I'm like kind of suicidal these days. I mean, with you kind of intervening in my life, it's definitely helped me not do that, but it still comes every now and then where I just feel the great desire to do so. But I don't know the other point I was going to make. I'll stop there. They'll come to me again.
Yeah. The situation is, I think everybody in the movement to some degree, even if they're dealing with depression or just any number of things, the tendency is to sort of hold it all inside. And you get burned out sometimes, honestly, because you realize that it's just this massive uphill battle that seems so incredibly impossible. And you realize that there's really not much you can do. You feel really powerless and unable to do what you would like to do. And one of the things that I realized, the situation that I was in is, sorry, I'm at a bit of a loss for words because of the subject matter. And the situation is that, you know, I found that I couldn't really help you in the way that I would like to. And
well, I want to disagree with something you said just now. Well, not completely disagree, because it is correct, but not correct in my situation. You know, I didn't hold these things in. I was actually very honest about all of them for a very long time. You know, I did my crowdfunding back in April to release a book. And, you know, while I didn't make anywhere close to the goal that I had asked to try to release some books, you know, I did get a little bit of money, and I managed to find a way to write some books for that. But I was explaining back then what my situation was. And it got very little attention from anyone. I've have Patreons right now. I have a Patreon, and I tell people on my videos all the time, I am running the risk of getting kicked out. I need help with medical bills. I really need help. And I've been very, very public about all of this for a very long time. And, bless everyone's hearts who've come forward now to try to talk to me and make sure that I know there are people out there who care about me. And I thank you all so much. But it really only seems to have happened now that I put up a GoFundMe saying, hey, I'm going to get kicked out. It's a matter of time before it happens. I could use a little bit of help. And I've been very public about this whole entire time.
I guess what I mean by that is that, even now, I don't know, it seems like you're trying to keep up spirits and everything like that. I've actually seen that, I've seen you become almost strangely positive in tone since you realized that this was going to happen, rather than, I don't know what's going on there, but yeah, I've been concerned. A lot of our friends have been concerned. And, I guess I wish that whatever happens, that somehow, we're just by being able to be in contact with us to some degree, that I don't know, that somehow it'll give you the strength to kind of just get back on your feet again. But,
well, you're asking about, how am I so positive in all of this, where you're mentioning that it seems like I am positive. And, the truth is I'm screaming in my mind constantly. I have been for a year. And with what's happening now, it's just that I'm accepting my fate. And in accepting my fate, I feel that I have some control in how this is going to be for me. I can't stop it from happening. But maybe if I get a laptop, maybe if I get a tent, maybe if I find some people online whose couches I can crash on for a few days, I have that level of control that it won't be so bad. And if I'm anything less than positive right now about my particular predicament, I would probably just shut down. I can't afford to be anything less than have a positive outlook, because if I start really saying, this is all really bad, and if I go on the streets I might not ever get out of it, I don't know what I would do in that situation.
Yeah.
I probably would just give up, and I don't want to do that. My life has been too much of a living hell for me to just give up. I want happiness in my life. I want some sort of satisfaction in my life that I've been denied most of my life. And, before my disability, I was really working hard to getting some resemblance of a life. And, I haven't really gotten that, and I want it. So, facing the possibility of living on the streets, yeah, it scares the hell out of me. But if I go in there with a plan, if I say, you know what, yeah, maybe I live on the streets for a year, but I'm going to be working. I'll have a laptop, hopefully. I'll be working and trying to make money to try to get myself off the streets. And if I go in there with a plan, if I go in there with a good attitude, I think I could make it out of it. Because, you have to try to be positive in the face of adversary, in an adverse situation.
Yeah. That's why I said, like, it's kind of like laughing to keep from crying. It's kind of like that video, I think it's entitled something like I can't remember what it was called, but basically the gist of it was that rape is honestly very funny or something like that. I'm trying to remember the name of the video. Basically, it was a male rape victim, and he was talking about how he frankly has to try and laugh to keep from crying. It's,
Yeah, I vaguely remember that, actually.
yeah,
Wish I could remember it too.
I wish I could remember the exact name of it, but it was very powerful. Just kind of becomes very overwhelming. I really don't want to end this on a bad note or anything like that. This is some serious shit, and maybe I will have some lighter topics in the future. So everybody who came along for the ride and stuck in there, all 7 of you, uh, thanks for being the kind of masochists you are to hang in there through all this. And then 2 people left and came back. But I I find that the situation becomes that the only way that anybody does anything is if women are somehow affected and are somehow seen as suffering directly from what's happening. And it seems like the only way that anybody would step in is if they found that women were suffering directly from men's turmoil instead of just wanting to help because men are in turmoil.
Well, I mean, let's look at some charities. Fine Young Capitalists, an all-woman group trying to help women in video games. They got funded. Real Cytheria. I mean, I was a part of that effort to raise awareness for her situation, and she got overfunded. She got more than what was being asked for. And yeah, I mean, she definitely needed help. Don't get me wrong on that, but she was a female. She got help. Liberal Lunacy, Shannon. I mean, she needed help with a chairlift that would have helped her situation in her home. And yeah, it was really great. She got funded. Cassie J for the Red Pill movie. She really got overfunded with hers. Anita Sarkeesian, she got well overfunded. When was the last time we saw a man get funded for a crowdfunding campaign?
Yeah, and it's true. When people see guys in turmoil, when they see them having issues, nobody says to themselves, "Wow, something really bad must have happened to that guy. Something, he must have just hit hard times." Something like that. They never think that it's something that can just so easily happen to anybody, just with a series of bad luck situations where they find themselves like one bad thing happens after another, boom, 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 and next thing you know, you're living out of your car or on the side of the road, sleeping rough, and it can definitely happen to anyone. And
feminists often talk about, that men need to use their privilege to help out. And of course, men really don't have any privileges, but, I make a challenge to women out there. And I'm not going to use that term, but it's like, if there's a man out there that needs help, take some initiative and try to help out the men in your lives to get help. Try to bring awareness, because people will listen to you. And it sucks that this happens, that because you have tits and a vagina, that you somehow have more agency than a man. But if you know someone in your life who is a man who really needs help, I'm asking as a man, make a couple of extra tweets, your own personal tweets. Don't do retweets, because people really don't read people don't really read retweets. Make a couple of tweets on your own. Do an article. Do what Rachel's doing. Rachel definitely is trying to help me out by giving me a stage right now and saying, "Hey, Mad Cat, tell my fans your story." So, I mean, this is one of the ways that we can bring awareness for men in this world. Another good friend of mine, Godless Mom, she does that. for a lot of her male friends who are not getting attention. In Feminism 2015, another great one, Gwen Lily Knight. These are all really great people who, you know, realize that the world is stacked against men in such a way, and they're using what resources they have to at least bring awareness. And
Yeah.
it's the unfortunate thing, and this is why the honey badgers are so popular. It's women talking about men's rights, because if it was a group of all men, no one would give it a second thought.
Yeah. And that's really the situation that we're in here, is that it kind of takes, you know, we can go on about all the rhetoric, we can go around all of the arguments and talking about all of these things, but it seems like nobody cares until it's said out of the mouth of a woman. It's so incredibly frustrating to me. I've seen men, really, really talented men, putting out really great content, and they don't get a fraction of the attention of some of the women. And not even all of the women are all that great at it either. They just have to, you know, put out videos and things like that. It gets frustrating after a while. It really, really does, because you want to know that you're getting attention because you bring something to the table, and not just because you have a vagina. And you want to know that people, that your actions are really helping because you're a great activist and not because you possess a vagina. And all I know to do in these situations is to try and use whatever little fame that I have. I don't know, the couple hundred of you that just kind of decide to float in every now and then and support me, and in my articles on Medium and my Tumblr blog and all these things that I'm doing, and even this YouTube channel, which doesn't have many videos on it right now, but I really hope to improve that over time. But all I know to do is to respect the platform that I've been given, and to use it to try and help folks like Mad Cat here. And I know you're doing a GoFundMe now, and you're not really asking for a lot, from what I understand. What are you? What's the status? What's the status of that right now?
Let me jump to that real quick. I'm just doing a refresh. So
Okay.
right now, my asking amount is $1,000, and it looks like I'm at $175 right now.
Mm-hmm.
But it's only been up for 2 days, so I'm very hopeful that we'll soon see a higher number. I kind of hate that I've done this like right after Thanksgiving and right before Christmas. I know that a lot of people want to have their money for this and that, and it's going to be open for probably a couple of months, or until I actually do get kicked out. But yeah, the thing that I'm trying to do with this, and why I'm only asking for $1,000, is because sorry, I just quickly lost my train of thought. The reason why I'm like trying to get a laptop, and that kind of seems like a luxury item for being homeless, but it's possible to maintain an online presence while not having a home. You wouldn't think it would be, because it's like, well, you're homeless. Why do you have a laptop? Sell that and get some food. But having a laptop is one of the most important things to have, or even having a cell phone is one of the most important things to have when you don't have anything else. So that's what my primary drive is, but I'm asking for $1,000. So maybe I can get a few extra things that will help me when I'm living on the streets to kind of get me out of it. Like, buying a tent, if I can't find like shelter for the night or whatever, I can just pop a tent and go in there. Get an umbrella, get a hat, couple of things that just would make my life a little bit easier. And certainly if I
Now,
get
you have,
more than that, a possibility is, going to get something called a brain scan, which might actually help me show that I'm disabled, and might even help me get a lawyer. Maybe, maybe not. But I haven't gotten this yet, mostly because I didn't know about this, but also because it's not something that's covered by insurance. It's kind of still an experimental thing, but it's something that, one, could show me that I'm disabled, and two, be something to help me. But that portion costs like anywhere from $4,000 to $10,000 to get treatment. Again, not covered by insurance. I don't expect to get that much, but if I could get like a brain scan, which is like $500, maybe that might help push things forward a little bit for me, so.
and you can be reached at ggmad_cat.
Yes, that is the best way to reach out to me. If you just go ahead and message me to add you back, I will, and then you can direct message me if you wish.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on, Mad Cat, and this has been another episode of Men's Rights Meta. Please, follow, subscribe, support the channel if you want to see more videos like this. All this is kind of a takes a toll on my poor busted ass computer. So this is probably like 10 years old now.
Hey, could you do a special voice for me on our promoting my campaign?
What do you mean a special voice? What do you want me to do?
I want you to do, oh god, what's her face from Batman?
Oh, Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn.
Yes.
I do a Harley Quinn. Oh my god. You know what? Eventually I will. Maybe I will. Maybe I will. I don't know. What would you want me to say? I don't even know if I'm warmed up for that.
Just
gotta get really nasally.
Mr. J, we need to give money to Mad Cat.
Oh god, that sounds really lame.
If you're listening now, you need to hound her because she does an amazing job of this. She's really good with the voices.
Damn it.
So just say, "Hey, Rachel, I want to hear that voice."
Oh, you know what? How about that? How about if you make the numbers go up on Mad Cat's page, I'll say something lewd in the voice of Harley Quinn. I don't know. Anything would help. Anything. Yeah, ideally I would like to keep you off the streets. But listen, if you guys have any other alternatives, if you people watching out there in in the tubes, as it were, have any other alternatives or ideas or anything for Mad Cat, please do. Again,
I'm willing to listen to any and all your suggestions. The only thing I'll say to that is realize that I've been doing this for like 3.5 years, and likely a lot of your first suggestions are things that I've already done. So if I reject them, I'm not rejecting you. I'm just letting you know that either A, it won't work for me, or B, that I've already tried. So just be aware of that. But if you have a suggestion, please let me know. I'll be very happy to hear it and discuss it with you.
And let us know what you think about all the things we were discussing in the comment section below. Thank you for tuning in, and have a nice night.